What's up, you guys? It's Keith from Stock Hours here, back again with another educational video. Today we're going to be talking about how to find stocks to trade. This is a question that we get asked pretty frequently, and the answer is actually pretty simple, but I'm going to take you through what we're looking for in these stocks to actually put together our watch list. So there's a few main components that go into picking out our stocks for our watch list. And a lot of the times people think we might use scanners or screeners, whatever you want to call them. And actually, we never use these. That's something that you see more frequently in penny stock trading, just small caps, anything like that. But we do not use scanners. We also don't use screeners for the most part. Occasionally, if we get a flow alert for one of these stocks, we may add it to the watch list just to keep an eye on it. But other than that, we're sticking to the same watch list for the most part. So some of these components that you're gonna wanna see for each of these stocks in the watch list is, first of all, do they have volume? If they don't have volume, these stocks are going to be very difficult to trade on a frequent basis. If you had a watch list created of entirely low volume stocks, it would be extremely difficult for you to find a setup that you could actually take advantage of. So yes, we do have stocks in the watch list that have lower volume than others, but it's fine because we have a lot of stocks in here that have high volume all the time. The next thing we're going to be looking for is contract volume. So since we trade options, we want to make sure that these options contracts all have enough volume for us to trade. When you see the contracts have less than 1,000 or less than 100 volume in some cases, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to get in and get out efficiently. Another thing we look for is, are these stocks listed on the NASDAQ or the S&P 500? We really like to trade stocks that are listed on the NASDAQ or the S&P 500 because a lot of the times these stocks will correlate with the overall market. This gives us something to base our trades off of. Is the stock stronger than the market? Is the stock weaker than the market? If it's not listed on either of these markets, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to tell because in theory, the stock should not correlate with the market as much if it is not listed on said market. In combination with volume on the contracts, we want to make sure that these contracts don't have a super wide spread. If these contracts do have a wide spread, it doesn't mean you can't trade it. It just means that it's going to be a bit riskier to trade. So we're going to go through how we look for each of these traits in a stock. And I'm just going to use my watch list as an example, but I will show you exactly what I'm looking for to figure out what this stock is listed on, if these contracts have volume, if the stock has volume in general. So we'll go ahead and go through here and move on to the next portion of this video. So ideally, all of our stocks have good volume, a tight spread, and good contract volume while being listed on one of the larger markets like the NASDAQ or the S&P 500. All right, so I had to make my camera a little bit smaller than usual, but you can see the first stock we have pulled up here is SMCI. Now, the very first thing that I'm noticing on this stock is right here, you can see it's listed on the NASDAQ. Whenever you see these little brackets next to the name of the stock, it will say NASDAQ or it will say NYSE. So this is going to show you what exchange these stocks are listed on. So you can see here SMCI is listed on the NASDAQ, and then just looking here at these moves, you can see we pick up volume pretty well throughout the day. Even though this is a pretty choppy day, you don't see a lot of gaps in the candles. So for the most part, you'll have relatively smooth movement. Now, SMCI is probably one of the most aggressive stocks that I could have picked for this example, but overall, you can see that we do have good volume. We can see here 33,000, 50,000, 60,000, and then even some of these candles have 70, 100,000 in volume. But you can look right here at this line, and overall for the day, you can see that this stock on an average candle has around 25,000 in volume. So first things are checked off, and we have our stock listed on a larger market. We have a good amount of volume for the day. Now we're going to go ahead and check the contract volume. Now, if you look at these contracts, you can see that they have good volume. It's not great, but it is a lot better than others, and it is definitely tradable. So you can see at the money contracts, the 875s have 4,500 in volume. The at the money contracts for the puts, they only have 402 in volume. But if you move down here to your next strike price, we have 1,792. And you can see even further out of the money contracts, which are a bit cheaper, and those are the ones that we will usually trade on this stock. Even further out of the money contracts have good volume overall, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,900. So we've got a good amount of volume on these contracts, which is a great sign for us. So as far as finding stocks to trade, you want to look for a good group of stocks that you can continuously find setups on and just take advantage of that same list for as long as you possibly can. As far as my watch list goes, I have the same exact stocks in the watch list that I had when I started. I've added a couple over time and I've taken out a couple over time, but the large majority is all the same. So this is why we have no need to use these screeners to just find random stocks that we are probably never going to trade again. So if you guys were looking at these contracts and looking at these strike prices, you will see the one downside to this stock is the spread on these contracts are atrocious. They will get tighter whenever the trade is getting closer to your level, but as far as just resting or in consolidation moves, the spreads get bad. You can see the bid here is 880 and the ask here is 950 on these 900 calls. That is not a good spread. But these contracts do move very aggressively. So a lot of the times when the stock is getting closer to your level or moving in your direction, these spreads will tighten. Now, moving on to another example. Obviously, Apple is a name that you guys all know. This stock is $214, which is generally, honestly, a stock that I don't trade that much just because contracts are cheaper, the stock is cheaper, and it's a slower mover, but this is still a great stock to trade. If you look the daily volume here, let's see the average for today. You can see today we didn't even have any crazy moves really. And if you look, all the candles that have volume here, we're looking at upwards of 100,000 in volume for the majority of the candles. And if you look here, I'll hover over this line. The average volume for these candles just today was a minimum of 50,000. So you're looking here and you can see, obviously there's a ton of volume on this. So you don't see a lot of choppy movement in the chart. You can see all these candles are completed on the 1 minute for the most part. Yeah, you aren't seeing too much choppy price action here. Overall for the day, kind of choppy movement, but the price action minute to minute is smooth. So once again, we're gonna move over to look at the contracts and see if these have volume. And would you look at that? The volume on these contracts is just as crazy as the volume on the stock. 179,000 in volume on the 215 calls, which are at the money right now. You can see the at the money puts, the 212.50s, which is a weird variant for the contracts. We generally try and stay away from playing these mid-range contracts here. So for example, we would look at the 215s or we would look at the 210s. Or on this example, we would look at the 215s, or generally we would look at the 220s. But if we're looking at the 220s right here, you can see these contracts are so cheap that we almost have to play either in the money at that point, or we would have to play the 217.50s. But even for these mid-range contracts, you can see we still have 104,000 in volume and 135,000 in volume. So these contracts have great volume. Market's closed right now, so the spread is a little bit wider than it would be generally. But generally, the spread on Apple contracts is between 1 to 2 cents, which is not bad at all. So if Apple is a stock that you guys like trading, obviously this is one I would put on your watch list. You can see right here, it's listed on the NASDAQ. So we have something to base the trade off of. Going down here, Amazon, once again, decent volume for the day on most of these candles. It's a cheaper stock now, so the volume is pretty good for the entire day, really. And if you look here, once again, listed on the NASDAQ, go to the options chains, you can see these options all have great volume, pretty decent spread. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and show you a bad example, even though it's still on my watch list. The reason that I keep this on my watch list is because whenever it gets a really good setup and is ready to take advantage of it, you have everything that you need in order to execute that. The volume will pick up, the spreads will tighten, and it will start being extremely aggressive to whichever direction you're trying to play. So this is a stock that obviously, if you look at it on the 1 minute, you can see the volume is very low. Second candle of the day only had 172 in volume. And you can see we're gapping up and gapping down on the 1 minute. Now, I do love this stock, but I only get to trade it every so often. But yeah, you can see here the price action is just horrible. The volume is not good. We're looking at 2,300 volume for like a decent candle in the day. Let's see, let's look at the average for the day. The average volume candle is 6,179. So that's the average for the day, and that's counting in this 31,680 volume on the very first candle. So yeah, the volume on this is not good. You can see we're still listed on the NASDAQ, and these contracts, these actually have some volume today, which is not usual, but for the most part, you'll see under 1,000 in volume, and especially at the open. At the open today, I was actually looking at 840.26 to the downside, which ended up playing out. But if you look at the contracts, these volume amounts right here that are being shown, that's for the whole day. So at open, the contracts I was looking at were hovering around 10 to 15 volume for about the first 5 minutes of the day. They ended up picking up to like 60 or 70, but if I'm going to buy 10 contracts, I don't want to be holding 1/7 of the overall volume on the contract. So that's something that would be a stock that you could definitely not add to your watch list. That would be something that would generally push me away from trading it. I do have a few stocks in this watch list that fit this criteria though, because when there is a good setup that's forming over a long period of time, then volume will pick up enough for you to trade it. So yeah, for the most part, my watch list stays exactly the same, and this is the way that I would go about looking for stocks to trade. And if you guys are wanting to go ahead and just add the watch list that I have onto your watch list, I will go ahead and put the list right there and right there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you guys out, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.